Valorant Patch Notes 7.09. What's up? Joellen here. Joellen does all the patch notes. She the GOAT. Happy last act of the year and cheers to ISO's release. Get out there and try out our newest duelists. Let us know what you think. And don't forget, there's a rank reset, fresh battle pass, and new premiere stage. Ooh, okay. So here's our image. We got ISO, premiere. These are big changes to premiere. The premiere changes are actually insane. Like, I am stoked for the premiere changes. The judge. I like how the judge has its own goddamn category. That's how many people are just upset about this gun. Agents. There's so many like insane agent changes that actually will affect the meta in pro play. ISO is the big update, right? Because he's the new duelist, and duelists typically have self-sufficiency in ranked servers and can be very, very impactful in ranked. So people are very, very excited about ISO entering the game because of the style of agent that he is classified as, right? Like, I had extremely high hopes for ISO. And as a content creator, I'm not gonna lie, I was just like, duelist, me play duelist, me play duelist, me play duelist, me play duelist. And then I did the playtest. I think I can get to that in a second, but let's take a look. So learn about ISO and his abilities on the new agent page. I don't think anyone ever really comes here. But anyway, undercut. So undercut, equip a molecular bolt, fire to throw it forward, applying a brief fragile to all players it touches. The bolt can pass through solid objects, including walls. So it's like a Viper Molly without damage, right? It's making people vulnerable, so that way they're taking double damage, which means they'll die super quick to like body shots, or say like one shot by like a breach aftershock, or one shot by a Hunter's Fury. There's like all kinds of potential plays like that, right? I've seen it throughout the playtest. I understand the capabilities here. This seems to be the best ability in his kit. Okay, double tap. I think initially when people saw the agent, people were like, this is so sick. Like, he can get a kill and get a fucking riot shield from Counter-Strike, which had to be removed from the game. It says start a focus timer. Once completed, enter a flow state during which downed enemies you kill or damage generate an energy orb. And that's that purple thing you see in the sky. Shooting this orb grants you a shield, which absorbs 1 instance of damage from any source. That could be a Raze ult, or that could be a shorty shot across the map that does like 1 damage. Contingency, or the wall that you can't shoot through. The cascade, the harbor cascade that you can't stop, that's not as big, that you can't shoot through. That's his C ability. And I thought that initially when I saw the agent that this would be the key function of his kit. I thought he would be given 2 of these when I first saw it. He's only given 1. And it says, equip to assemble prismatic energy. Fire to push an indestructible wall of energy forward that blocks bullets. But abilities go through it. And that is the key thing to remember. And we'll come back to that in a second. Ultimate. Now this is spicy. So it's going to be weird as hell watching this in pro play, because there's going to be 2 things going on at the same time in like different dimensions. So it says, equip an interdimensional arena. Fire to hurl a column of energy through the battlefield, pulling you and the first enemy hit into the arena. You and your opponent duel to the death. But that is the kit of ISO. So now like going into depth of like ISO. Is he on this shit yet? Ah, that's unlucky. I don't see him. Right, so we have his contingency, his little vulnerable thing, and his ult right here. And again, these aren't the exact widths. They're not the exact lengths. So keep that in mind right now when you're watching this. The problem with the contingency is that you only get 1 of them, and it's very difficult to use. So I quickly found out that, again, it's not this width. So if you cast it from like this spot, there will always be gaps in it, is what I realized. Like, imagine there's like a jet op right here. You will get picked on the side of this contingency, like in certain angles. It does not cover this. You could technically back up to here, is what I realized. It would be able to like block this line, but then again, you only have 1 of them. In a meta where dive agents are super important, I don't think you would want to be using this to take early map control. So you would end up probably wanting to save it for the actual like sight hit. If that's the case, then you only have 1 of them. You're sending this contingency forward, right? So this person in the site can't shoot you. So you're like running up, you're clearing the right, you're clearing the left, you're doing all this shit. You cannot lock it. So it's just gonna keep going off the map. That just seems weak to me. And it seems weak because I know in pro play, the counter util is strong. Now in ranked, I think this is going to be insane. I don't think people's counter util in ranked is good enough to stop something like this powerful. But I'm going to go through the list of things that can just actually shit on this, right? So let's take Jet off of this. Now imagine there's an Omen playing here, and the second you throw that contingency, he just blinds. He could just be like, okay, I'll just swing past it, and then I'll just clear it out. You've now wasted it, right? You've wasted your contingency. You have no more. You could have like a Raze in the site, and the Raze just throws like a paint shell or a satchel to like fuck up your movement, or a boom bot that just like kind of goes through the wall, right? And detects you, and then the Raze just like runs through. You know, like next you could have like a breach right here, right? The breach could just like immediately fault line the second they see that. They could immediately aftershock the box the second they see that. So like the aftershock is stopping you from entering the site. And then they could like flash the box if they wanted to. They could peek around. There's so many things that could just cancel out your one piece of entry util, right? And that is what I think is the problem here, is like, I think he needs two walls. There could be like an Astra Gravwell here that just like kind of shuts down his move because he's very flat-footed. There could be like a Gecko Molly. There could be a Gecko Flash. There could be literally like a Brim Molly. There could be a Phoenix that's just timing this thing as it's coming at you, and the Phoenix just flashes through the wall and pushes. Yeah, you can't shoot through it, but nothing's stopping anyone from using an ability and coming through it. So that's like a core problem. Now this vulnerable thing is very, very strong because you can do shit like, you know, like send it through the site like this and make anyone, you know, like in this line vulnerable. But in my opinion, at the top level, people aren't going to respect this, because if you do decide to respect this vulnerable, you're giving up too much map control. Like, the people that are in favor of this agent believe that this is going to push people off of lines and make people scared. And I think it might initially, but I think that is not something that's going to happen consistently. I think this is the best part of his kit, without a doubt. You could do shit like vulnerable this Covey and aftershock it. And, you know, if this aftershock hits someone, they're dead. At the very start of the round, you have your ISO like right here, and he's like literally like mwah, like kissing the Sova, and you have your Sova right here too. And the Sova, it's gonna be confusing, the Sova uses his Hunter's Fury and just like one-shots people. So if there's like an A default, the Hunter's Fury will literally one-shot kill them. You know, like that's pretty crazy. This combo in particular is pretty goddamn spicy. It also makes shock darts significantly better. Is it worth getting rid of, you know, the current comps? Again, I don't think so. I think this is the best part of his kit though, and there's a lot of possibilities here with this ability, the undercut. Now going into his ult, right? So you're like approaching A like this, and your ISO, and your ult does like some, I'm just gonna use the breach ult like in its full effect. It's not this wide. The ult is not this wide, and it doesn't go as far. It is possible to miss people with this ult. Apparently, it will take Yoru's out of dimensional drift, so it will cancel a Yoru ult, essentially making it worthless. It will take a Viper out of her pit. It will take a Sova out of his Hunter's Fury. It will ruin Arena's Empress. It will ruin a Raze Showstopper. You can take away the laser fingers from Laser Lady. You can ruin a KO ult, and you start to see like this ult might literally be the best ult in the entire game because of its counter to all of the other ults. I mean, look at the agents that I'm ruining their ult from. Like, it is hard to catch a deadlock probably before they use Annihilation. It's also hard to even see a deadlock because, quite frankly, there's not many of them. But look at the agents that I would ruin the ults of. I mean, it's kind of fucking nuts, right? This is actually, in my opinion, the key value of this guy's kit. How many are on here? 11? 11 agents, dude. 11 agents can have their ults ruined. The other thing about this ult is, say you were to cast it onto the site, right? You could have like Jet here. You could have Breach ready to play like counter, and you could have some other geek like playing like in this Covey, and they're in some kind of like triple crossfire setup, right? Well, if I'm playing this agent, you might say like, well, what if you lose the duel, Sean? What if you lose the duel? That's terrible. Like, that's like horrible. But here's the thing, like we're hitting this site, which is already pretty goddamn easy to take. So easy to take that teams typically need to stack it to hold it at the pro level. And so I remove this Sova from the play. I die. It's now a 4-on-2 entering this site, right? So, you know, like that Sova's gonna come back, but we have like 4 people entering the site. We've blocked off the rotations in some kind of way, and now these two have to like think on the fly. How are they gonna hold this site missing a player? The answer is that they're not gonna hold the site probably. And even if the Sova comes back, his position is known and he's just gonna die. If an ISO is good at using the ult, worst case scenario, you go from a 5-on-5 to a 4-on-4. Best case scenario, you're in a 5-on-4 and the site is lost for the other team. Going into the fucking grid shot ability, the shield thing, you know, like there's a little orb thing. So I am Demon 1 and I'm opping this line at the start of the round as ISO. That's a bad idea. I don't think I would want ISO opping. And why is that? Because there's no escapability. Like I shoot this player with an op. How the f am I gonna shoot this orb before I get traded? What am I gonna do? Pull out my pistol, shoot an orb? Then someone's gonna shoot me and just immediately remove the shield. So he's not an opper. He's definitely not an opper. And the other thing about this focus ability is this thing, double tap. You buy it for, I believe, 200 credits. I believe it's 200 credits. Could be 150. I believe it's 200. And when you click it, it's something like 10 seconds. So you can see it counting down right there. Maybe it's like 12 or 13 seconds because it's going a little bit slow. It's not like Reyna. You don't have a timer on using like this shit. You don't have to activate it. It's just there. It's just there. And if you get the kill, you use it. But for ISO, you actually have to time when you think the fight's gonna happen. And then on top of that, you're gonna have to hit the grid shot thing before you get traded. And then once you get it, it's not like you have it for the whole round. You only have it for like a dozen or so seconds, like a couple dozen seconds, like 20 seconds maybe. That just makes his kit so underwhelming. It's so bad compared to the other duelists. And compared to what you lose when you don't run like double controller or double initiator, it does not seem worth it. It does not seem worth it to me. Okay, let's get to the rest of the patch notes. Cypher, Skye, Fade, and Raze. This patch, we're looking to address some issues in the balance of power between Sentinels, especially Cypher, and some other agents on the roster. Sentinels often craft very deliberate setups, only to have agents like Raze, Skye, and Fade destroy them with typical utility usage. In this patch, we're looking to update Cypher's Trapwire C ability to try to sway these interactions more in his favor and to encourage enemy agents to have to be more intentional and deliberate if they aim to use their utility to counter Sentinel setups. These changes force attackers to actively destroy traps to break Cypher setups and push interactions with utility like Prowlers and Trailblazers more in Cypher's favor. In addition, the potency of the traps when they snag an enemy has been increased slightly to make sure opponents have to respect their threat. Trapwire. Decrease the time until the trap concusses a captured enemy. It went from 3 seconds. It felt like that rarely happened. Like the only time this happened was when like a duelist like Jet or Raze like satcheled or dashed in and like they decided to just not try to break it because they're so far ahead and they hope a teammate does it for them. Now it concusses you in 1.5 seconds. It's half the time. It is way faster. After concussing an enemy or an enemy in the trap being killed, the trapwire no longer destroys itself, but instead rearms after 0.5 seconds, allowing it to ensnare another enemy. That is fucking crazy. Bro, he is going to be so strong. Like, there's going to be so many trip kills. He is incredibly strong in this patch. Duration of the tag slow when hit by the trap increased from 0.5 to 2 seconds. So literally like everything that they could have buffed with this tripwire, they did. Skye, the Trailblazer, adjusted Trailblazer's collision so that it goes under trapwires placed at mid-height. This won't affect the hitboxes for weapon damage. You know, like before, Skye's would just, you know, like they would be able to dog, and the dog goes so far, and it would just eat up your entire setup. Now, if you just strategically place the trap like a little bit higher, people can't crouch under the trip. They can't jump over the trip, but the dog would have to jump to break the trip. Prowler. Adjusted Prowler collision so that they go over trap wires placed at foot height and under trap wires placed at head height. This won't affect the hitboxes for weapon damage. Fade Prowlers, they kind of like float a little bit. They're not like flush with the ground. Like they're not like a dog that's running, right? So if you put this shit like on the floor, the Fade Prowler is going to go over it. If you put the trip at head height, the Prowler is going to go under it. Now, putting it at head height, someone could crouch under it. Putting it at foot height, someone could jump over it, right? So there are weaknesses here. Don't get me wrong. Raze will have to be more precise with their paint shells in order to deal damage to enemies, including destroying enemy traps. Additionally, Raze will need to be more intentional in picking between using blast back for mobility or damage. So Raze finally caught a nerf, right? Let's go through it. Paint shells. Primary grenade explosion radius went from 6 meters to 5.5. So that's like the initial like pop, right? So you have to get a little bit closer to them, not significantly, but you know, 0.5 meters, it's something. I'm thinking like, I don't know, just like throwing paint shells at like a default plant to like really fuck the person up. It'll be a little bit more intentional with it. Secondary grenade explosions radius also lowered. So from 6 meters to 5.25. Primary grenade explosion minimum damage went from 15 to 1. So before you like tap someone and do like 15 damage, now it could do 1. It could literally do like 1 damage. So we might see some like weird scenarios where people have like weird HPs that we're not used to. Secondary grenade explosion minimum damage also went from 15 to 1. The damage multiplier to enemy util from 250 to 100. So before, paint shells was just like melting util, like because it would get multipliers for util. It would do more damage to util than it would to a person, and so they would break lockdowns a lot easier and shit like that. Blast back. Satchel doesn't deal damage until fully armed, so that means like, you know, when you throw a satchel on the ground, you go like beep, 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 beep. Like when it starts to be fully armed, that's when it finally does damage, and that arm time has increased from 0.5 seconds to 1.5 seconds. That is pretty significant. Like before, Razes could just like kind of like satchel past Cypher trips and kind of just break them, and now that doesn't seem like it's going to be as prevalent. Weapon updates. Judge. With the changes below, we're sharpening the Judge's identity as a hunker down style shotgun by reducing some of its effectiveness while moving. With the reduced mag size, we're hoping to create more opportunities for enemies to catch a person reloading their Judge, as well as nudge the person with the Judge to be more efficient in order to get multi-kills. Judge. Reduced mag size from 7 to 5. Increased jumping spread from 1.25 to 2.25. This is like a big one. Increased running spread from 0.1 to 0.75. Like these are the two big ones. I don't think this truly matters. Like when is someone going 6 to 7 Judge shots deep? The only time would be like if they're on like the verge of acing. like this shit doesn't really matter with the Judge. Let's be real. Look how filthy this gun is. So let's see how many bullets he uses. I don't even know. 1, 2. So he still gets the majority of those kills. I'm not gonna lie. Like he got 4 kills within 5 bullets. So I would imagine he still gets 4 kills. If this is like played again on the current patch, he's getting 4. Premiere updates. Okay. This is actually kind of good. Premiere stage episode 7 act 3 is live with a few updates and new features. As always, good luck in your games. Premiere practice. This is so fire. I'm so glad they finally added this. There will be windows of time where you can queue for practice on select non-match days. Check your calendars for the schedule. These matches will follow Premiere match structure, but will not affect your Premiere score. So this means like you can scrim the map of the week. Unlike ranked where you can't like select your map, this is like you're playing the map of the week. You're playing against other like competitive 5 stacks. It's not for anything other than like, you know, practice. This is a really, really cool thing to add to the game for the casual community that doesn't know how to use like scrim finding tools that are outside of the game itself. This is something that Riot is really good at, is eliminating the need for shit, you know, like prac or whatever the teams are using these days. Enrollment updates. Teams created before or during the new team creation window will now be able to recruit members and participate in Premier at any point during the stage. Timeouts. Every match, teams will have 1 timeout per side and an additional timeout in overtime. So we're operating like by VCT rules now in Premier, which is so sick. Like, you're getting timeouts now. You know, like, if shit goes wrong, like Mimi kicking the power cord out, we take a timeout now. Thank God. You guys remember that when we played Plat Chat? Mimi kicked the power cord out. My God. Playoff qualification threshold. We're lowering the qualification threshold in this stage to 600 points. We recognize that during this busy time of year, it can be hard to schedule your team's matches. We wanted to make it more forgiving if you have to miss a week. That's dope. That's very forward thinking. Matchmaking. We've made some slight adjustments to find you fairer matches during your weekly matches. Zones. Some regions can't support the same number of divisions, so we made adjustments to certain zones to support generally healthier queue times and improved match fairness. Coo. Thank you, Joe Ellen. Bless you for giving us yet another update.